This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, we're recording. Application. Yeah. Okay, you can see my screen? Yeah, you can see it. Okay. Okay, hi guys. So this is the second meeting we are having. So what we will talk about is basically some of the stuff that was left from previous meeting, and I would like to make this a more strict schedule. We said monthly, so I would like to keep it like that. Just give me a heads up or something in chat so that I know that you can hear me.
All good.
All good. Yeah.
We can hear you.
So, yeah. So again, for today, I mean, we'll be talking about organization. We'll be mentioning new tier 1 projects that are coming in ARK. I think this is something that will be very interesting for all of you guys. Then I would like to have your feedback based on what we release now inside the core, you know, how you can develop distributed applications, combining new, let's say, custom transaction logic, combining plugins. How do you see it? How do you want to use it? Where we can improve on top of it. And there was a new draft proposal submitted for Core VM, which is something I've been working on previously months. So this is just a draft, so it's an idea that could be pushed forward. And of course, this is where your expertise will be also valued. So for the schedule, I'm proposing that we do monthly meetings as we agreed. And to make it more strict, let's do it every last Thursday in month. So you can all more or less plan ahead. So is this something okay for you guys?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Okay, good. And for the agenda, the first two meetings was presented by us. So from our side, but essentially anyone can come up, let's say 1 week before we're going to have a delegate meetup, and anyone can suggest something that we want to discuss, meaning it can be either a new AIP proposal or something that he wants to present that he was building, or a partnership, or basically anything. We can just make it then strict and plan the agenda, and that's it. Reach out to Sam, so he's our comms guy. You know him also. He'll be able to schedule the agenda. He's the link between public Slack and us, because we're not all present there, as you know. So for tier 0 projects, I would like to just mention a few points. You know, one part of the community outreach of the expansion of the ARK ecosystem was the bounty program, where a lot of PRs were submitted, new functionalities were added. But after core is becoming now more and more stable, more and more, let's say, module-based, flexible, it is easier to build solution on top of it. So we'll be introducing more tier 0 projects, and this will be essentially bigger projects that are addressing, let's say, complex solutions, not just smaller bounties, but maybe a whole applications built on top of the ARK ecosystems. And these applications are meant to expand and grow our product or tooling landscape, however you want to call it. We will make a list of things we think we need to add functionalities to, I don't know, to Explorer, to Wallet, to Core, to whatever. And of course, if you think you have some good ideas or stuff that we didn't think of, you can also apply for a tier 0 proposal. This will be all this information will be public, so this is very important. This will be available on our new website, which is coming soon, meaning that all the projects and related tasks, or let's say subtasks under a specific tier 0 project that will be running, will be available, traceable. So you will also be able to actually see the payouts, see the transactions, see the phases that were closed. So let's say some kind of mini project management on the website, and of course everything public and transparent. So maybe Mark, are you here? Yeah, so the cryptology delegate is here. So he's one of the first tier 0 projects with us. So he saw an opportunity. He presented actually a quite good idea how we could expand the ecosystem. We all agree that this is something that goes under tier 0 landscape. So Mark, I would like to congratulate you on being here and maybe give you a few words and some slides that you can present what we'll be doing in the next 6 months. Let me just make you a presenter.
All right, thank you.
Okay, just a second. Yo, you have it.
Okay, let me see how this works. Application window.
The usual.
And then, all right, if it's good, you see something now?
Only darkness.
Only darkness?
We did before, like a few seconds ago, but then it went dark. Now we see it, yeah.
Keep it like that, yeah. Don't...
Okay, I'll do it like this.
Yeah.
So, like Chris mentioned, we're going to start with the first tier 0 project, and that's integrating ARKTippr and ARKPay. I'll give you a little bit of context. So ARKTippr is oriented at consumers, at people using the ARK blockchain, right? And currently, we're only running on the Reddit platform, and we're only doing some basic transaction services, sending people small tips, sending people ARK, right? So ARKPay is aimed at more a business side of things. And at this moment, ARKPay is lacking a bit of functionality, mostly a backend. And I see an opportunity where we can combine the two and integrate them and create a full second layer payment system for ARK. And then with that also for the bridge chains, right? So there's, like, for me in this project, 5 categories of integrations. First of all, we need to expand the platform. So instead of only Reddit, we also need to go to things like Twitter, WhatsApp, SMS. And then we need to open up the new ARKPay, which is ARKTippr ARKPay, for other people to use it, to build upon it. So we're going to open up webhooks and API, adjacent API. Right, so everybody here can then build their own things based up on our backend. We need to integrate the current ARKPay solutions so that we can create also an environment that's interesting for businesses. Then number 4, this is a big one, decentralized exchange, where we can trade with each other and with other bridge chains between ARK as a base pair and basically every other coin or token that is going to be built upon our core, which is very interesting also to give value to ARK. And last category, improvements, additions. What we made is not perfect. We can always do better, and we can always add new exciting things, or not even normal things as well, right? So for the first 6 months, this month I will be restructuring ARKTippr in a way that it is more in line with the ARK core, meaning TypeScript, meaning modules, and meaning full open source. So by the end of this month, there will be a TypeScript version of ARKTippr built with NPM modules that everybody can use and play with. In June, we're going to work on expansion, mainly Twitter. So tipping and sending, and then enabling also the cross-platform sending between Twitter and Reddit, which is, I think, kind of interesting as well. Then July is all about the API. So there's going to be a full JSON API, and everybody can hook up or hook into the ARKTippr ARKPay backend. August, we're going to be expanding the API with webhooks. So you can get signaled if anything happens within ARKPay, within ARKTippr. Imagine, especially for ARKPay, on a transaction received that you don't have to pull, but well, you get it delivered to your door, which is probably very useful for a lot of businesses. Then September is about browser integration. So I want to make a MetaMask or a Badger clone and create an HTTPS wallet. So you can integrate into the pay system from within your browser. In October, Internet of Things. Think about Bluetooth beacons, BLE, or NFC beacons that can receive tips or that can send tips like a faucet. Right, so this is a lot of work for the coming 6 months, but we're getting there. And then after these 6 months, because there's a whole lot of more to do, so we need more platforms. We need a desktop wallet plugin. I want to make an ARK community, which is kind of like Mimo.cash. I'm not sure if you know it. It's the Bitcoin Cash version of Twitter, where we can send messages and also transactions between on-chain between users. A WordPress plugin with typical payment system plugin like or e-commerce plugin systems like WooCommerce or Jigo Shop or etc. We need website templates, meaning that it will be easy for anybody to create a small website that hooks into the ARK Pay system. We need full backend integration, right? We need the DEX, which is a really big one, which will start as an OTC broker and an escrow integration for any token based on ARK Core, and later on integration for Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, Ethereum, you name it. And then we have the additions, right? The improvements, pseudo-privacy transactions, vanity usernames, expirable tips, recurring payments, one-time usage, wallets, faucets, etc. So this is a big project. This is, I think, a great showcase also for the Tier 0 projects. And yeah, I'm happy to be the first to start here. So Chris, if you like, I'll give you the screen back.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Okay. You saw the agenda. It's quite big. Yeah. So doing such a big, let's say, Tier 0 is something that will need to be adjusted and aligned. So we'll be doing like weekly reviews. We'll be testing what has been done. Some of the parts, like you mentioned, DEX are still, especially decentralized exchange is something that has to be researched. So we'll be adjusting some of the, let's say, tasks along the line. But this is the core outline, and for the first month, I think they are pretty well defined. There's no screen, yeah? Okay. Guys, if you have any questions, just shoot. I mean, this should be an open discussion, so go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question. So first of all, this looks really nice, and congrats on getting the Tier 0 contract, I guess. My question was regarding the memo.cache thing that you mentioned. So I this really doesn't, to me, it doesn't seem like it meshes in with the other stuff. So could you explain how this will fit in here?
I'm sorry, Mac. A part of your question fell away. Could you repeat it, please?
Yeah.
Yeah, my question was that to me, it doesn't, the memo cache idea doesn't seem to fit in nicely with all of the other stuff. So could you explain a bit more about that?
It's an additional platform, right? We want ARK to be used for as many things as possible, and the memo cache idea is kind of a way to show off what we can do with a payment backend, front end, on chain. So it's kind of a marketing gimmick, I guess.
Okay, I get it now.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's also among the goals that are further down the line. So
yeah. So actually, one reason I ask about it also is that I have been thinking about making something similar. although it's not exactly like a Twitter clone that memo cache is. So if you make this as well, then I think it's really nice. We would have some more examples of what ARK can do.
I think even this would even be a great opportunity to create the memo cache idea as a separate tier 0, right? As a spin-off. And then
yeah, I mean, exactly as Mark said. I mean, that's the idea. So to involve you guys more, to collaborate more, to work together more. I think that's the only way for an ecosystem to grow. And actually, that's the essence of the ecosystem is working together, especially now that, as I mentioned, the core is getting more stable and stable, more modular, more things can be built on top of it. So yeah, that's why the new tier 0s. So even if you see, we mentioned memo cache or WooCommerce plugin, some of these things aren't set in stone. So you can collaborate together, you can join. I mean, everything is open.
Yeah. One more thing. It's not really a question, but a comment. In the past, I have talked to Mark a bit about, I was suggesting him about how he could make like the ARKTippr decentralized. So I'm still available if he needs any advice or suggestions. So feel free to ask.
Yeah, thank you, Mac. We will absolutely talk about that because there's going to be some challenges I've already foreseen getting things decentralized in a good way, right? So no, I will absolutely come back to you.
Okay, awesome.
You know.
Okay, any other questions for Matt? Or can we jump forward?
Just a question regarding one thing that you mentioned. What exactly is this memo cache thing? If you can just explain it.
It's an on-chain cache been creating since, I don't know, like several months. Resistance-free and how do you say it? Do you have it? Oh, yeah, I have it there.
Okay, I see. Okay, cool.
Yeah. Censorship-free, that's what I wanted to say.
No, that's what you're looking for.
That was the word I was looking for.
Exactly. Okay, cool. You see my screen, I guess. Yeah. Okay. Let's move forward to the app development. So we all know there's a ton of hype around distributed application, especially let's say looking at Ethereum networks application being built on top of smart contracts or using the powers of smart contracts. We've been thinking a lot how to improve that, and of course some of the modules that are now in core are actually addressing that. And these are one thing is plugin infrastructure, yeah, so you can easily create your own plugin. And another addition that is already running now with 2.3, and all our basic transaction types are implemented with it, is the generic transaction interface. So you now have like two very strong tools to give you the backend power, so you can develop almost any kind of business logic on top of your to support your application. So by doing a plugin, you can interact with the blockchain, you can talk with database, you can hook the transaction pool, so you have the events, you can create HTTP servers, you can add your databases, you can do whatever you want. So it's all limited actually to your creativity. So my question would be for you guys, I thought that, so what is holding you back? So where are the missing features? Now you can build your own custom transaction types, you can expand them, you can add business logic, you can add additional fields to it, and then you can start your own HTTP servers database. So what's the missing link? So I mean, I saw some of you guys already develop some of the plugins, but why not more? Where can we improve? So this is maybe a question from me to you, and I hope somebody will answer it.
Yeah, I can start. So I developed several different plugins, but most of them, they're all kind of like either monitoring tools or something like that. It's not really something that I personally see very useful for the like ecosystem as entirely, like something that would I would see like someone that wants to start a dApp use. And the thing I'm struggling with the most is how does the actual developing of a dApp actually come into the plugin development? like how can like this entire space around plugins and building a dApp is basically a bit confusing for me personally. Like I'm not sure where to start, how to do it, how to make it in a way that's decentralized and not like that's only my node is running it and everybody basically has to, I don't know, send messages to my node and things like that.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, these are the other issues that we are opening now. Actually, with the decentralized applications, you know, dApp by definition is something that is actually using either smart contracts or it is using our plugins and new transaction types, and then the dApp is a normal application living on top of this. So you know, like a higher layer of business logic that either interacts with your new transaction types, store additional data on the chain, and also starts, I don't know, new REST endpoints and whatever you built into your plugin. So this is up to you how you want to scale your application. But the D in that app is, of course, now related to how you want to distribute it. Yeah. So if you want a good D app on a chain that is running, so essentially all the delegates would have to agree to enable your plugin for it to run. Yeah, that was actually your question. So on mainnet, I guess this is kind of more difficult. It comes down to the votes between you guys. So between delegates, you decide which plugins will you run, how will you run it. You're running the network. But if you are running some kind of a private chain, or if you're running a bridge chain that is essentially like covering a business process between different entities, so where you have more control, then you can just enforce the installation of a plugin on top of it. So which makes it easier because you know you have full release functionality. You can release updates. Anyone can update it. It's distributed. So if one peer is down, you still have access to, I don't know, if it's a smaller chain, 5 or 10 peers. But essentially, it's a system. So the chain in the background is a platform where you will, let's say, install your plugin. There will be more tools on top of it, and of course, plugin installation in the long run will become a part of our deployer, where you can pre-select your chain, select different plugins you want to run, and actually run that chain specifically targeted at, let's say, a special industry process or business case. Yeah. So that's the dApp in the applications.
So the only kind of concern that I have, so if let's say I have some dApp idea and I want to build it, and I know it's not, the plugin's not going to be included in the ARK's mainnet, so I go with a bridge chain. So like, because then I kind of lose the thing that people using ARK can actually interact with my app. Because there's only ACES that bridges the thing, and we know how is it from legal point of view if you run an ACES node. So like I kind of lose on the people that already use ARK, because they won't be able to use my bridge chain. They would need to get those tokens from somewhere, right? So it makes that part a bit difficult.
To that, Rock, that's what we're going to build with the new ARK Pay as well, right? That's going to be also the DEX, what it's going to be about, that your bridge chain can get tokens from through ARK, or get value in the tokens through ARK. So that will solve probably that part of the system.
So one of the bigger challenges, I guess, in the whole blockchain space are, let's say, some kind of user-friendly atomic swaps or feasible atomic swaps that don't require manual console interaction. This is something that we're also working on. So it really depends how you want to build your application. If you're targeting mainnet, community outreach, ARK token holders, of course, it's going to be more difficult to pull them on your bridge chain and to get activity. But by building or by reusing a bridge, you could essentially introduce some kind of two-way pegging. So when new transaction types come out, now that GTI interface is mostly done, new transaction types will start to roll out, especially the AIP 11 and 18 ones. So like using time locks logics and using time lock logic with to enable some kind of swapping mechanism. So this is something where I see the interaction and that will actually give value to your application running on the side chain. So meaning doing some kind of heavy computations, but still pegging and connecting the coins together. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I had a few comments regarding.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
Max.
so I had a few comments regarding the usage of plugins. So as I understand it, the goal of ARK is to be an easy to use solution that almost anybody can use to deploy their bridge chain. And as like thinking about that, we expect that a lot of the users that will be using ARK would not be maybe expert developers. So to me, it seems like if we use plugins, because it is so close to the consensus layer. For example, if you're creating new transactions, then you need to know how a blockchain works, almost every detail of that, and you need to be able to design around that. But if you were, for example, using a VM or something, then you don't need to care about that. You just need to care about your own state. So to me, it seems like there is a extra difficulty here, which most people won't know how to deal with, and they would make mistakes around that.
Yeah, actually a good comment. That is why I started to dig a bit more into the core VM, so which we'll be discussing next. But you know, by saying ARK really makes it easy to develop your blockchain, but still, you know, it's we're targeting developers. So I'm not expecting my mom or anybody to use blockchain. So blockchain will be in the background, will define protocols, will define communications, but on top of it, there will be some kind of graphical interfaces, mobile apps that will use the logic in the back. So so you have two ways. So yeah, one thing is enable a custom chain deployment for some kind of specific problem. But when your chain is deployed, then then you can continue building on top of it, meaning adding new graphical interfaces covering whatever business logic. So yeah, it's somewhere in between. So thanks.
Yeah,
I mean, that's a good comment actually. So
yeah, I think the plugins are also useful. But I think there are some things that might be way too difficult for even average developers. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. You mentioned that's why I wanted to have, you know, the generic transaction interface. If you look at object-oriented development, where you have some abstract classes, inheritance, and giving you the power, we also want to do, let's say, templates that will actually just generate all the skeletons for your new transaction types. This will be done in later versions, so we have to change a few things in core. So knowing the whole core mechanics will not be so important anymore. But just you will be enforced to implement some methods, like how to apply a transaction, which is the validation point. So essentially, I'm not sure if you guys checked GTI or ARP29 in depth, but it's already aligned in this direction that it gives you a template. You just have to manually use it now, where you can really just re-implement the serialized methods and the apply logic, and then you're done. So. But regarding that, I had the same concerns, you know, the big difference, I guess, the big pros and cons between plugins and smart contracts are in the way that a smart contract is an automated execution, so you can actually run something in a secure way. And once you deploy it on the chain, is there, so everybody can use it, which is, yeah, good or bad. But the thing is, they have one important part, which are internal calls. So essentially, by running some kind of transfer core inside the smart contract, enables you to change state of a wallet. So meaning transfer A to B, the state, if I transfer 5 tokens, the tokens should be transferred to another wallet. So this is something that you cannot do now with the plugins. Yeah. So that's why I started to dig a bit more about having some kind of automated execution environment that shouldn't be limited by like Solidity, and I wanted to have, let's say, JavaScript power. So we already tested some kind of plugin logic inside the desktop wallet, And essentially with ARP81, it's just a concept for now, but it enables you to run JavaScript code in isolated environment. So the idea is to give developers scripting, or let's say JavaScript power to develop their own contracts in JavaScript language. Yeah, this JavaScript will be executed in safe isolated environment using Chrome, so Google's V8 engine, which is very fast and also kind of very stable. So when we did some research, what's being used is essentially either you use Ethereum or some kind of virtual machine. So you have Ethereum virtual machines, you have some kind of Java virtual machine contracts, and then actually another option is run isolated code in a secure sandbox and just connect the states. And this is something that Core VM is actually proposing. So you can run actually JavaScript code, and you can also, it supports WebAssembly. I haven't tested yet. The idea is so to define a template, how a JavaScript contract in ARK would look. So meaning there would be a predefined class that would enforce some of the methods you could use. And this class would essentially be superseded by a superclass that would do the validation, and that superclass would have access to state, and it would be a superclass which is actually already inside the wallet manager, meaning that the transfers would be done in the same way, and we have to add actually the additional storage capability, so that whatever method you implement, whatever business logic you want to have, either if it's an auction contract or if it's a contract for some kind of parking space, or actually could also be an ICO contract in this matter, meaning that we would have to limit you in some way. And security, actually, this is very important, because now we are moving from, let's say, predefined opcodes which are used in Ethereum virtual machine to actually addressing JavaScript developers, to giving them power to develop their smart contract logic, which is actually not a right name, but should be just a distributed application logic, because you would actually deploy your application in the form of a JavaScript file and run it inside the secure environment. So we have to limit it by memory, by heap, I know, execution type, and some other protections. So this is all already done inside the V8 engine. What is so the issue is also inside the V8 engine, every second, so every 8, 10, or 12 release of Node.js updates their inside core mechanics. So actually the next release will be somewhere in October this year, which will update the V8 engine inside Node, and this will be then inside the Node.js, and this will be then the long-term support version for the next 2 years, which actually goes quite nice with these prototype projects we are doing. Of course, there are quite big security consideration. I would, definitely run it on bridge chain, that's for sure, but on mainnet, we should really do some extensive testing and first finalize stuff. So there are still pros and cons. But essentially, by deploying such automated logic, which is now more than smart contract, because we can push it on is JavaScript based, it gives us the power to actually do the automated transfers, which we really want. So, and the token holders can just transfer token or lock tokens, or actually do anything that is possible by accessing state, which is in essence every smart contract can transfer value and so transfer tokens, and also store some internal state, which is a simple database storage. So inside this proposal, actually, I just started to I took, I think, I worked on in the previous month, so this one was quite busy, but we are looking at, so where some of the pros and cons, you can, if you compare it to plugins, it can be run isolated environment, you can add custom behavior, you can add your custom logic, you can specify actually like a private contract, meaning that you can predefine which addresses will be able to run it or not. There's no need to run a sidechain, so we can have more logic inside the contract, which is JavaScript file. So, and then we are looking at how we're going to handle deployment stage, execution stage. So regarding the execution, actually, we are looking at these three virtual V8 engine implementations. In essence, the first concept we are playing with isolated VM, which is basically mostly up to date and has the let's say the most low-level access to the V8 execution engine, so you can really access the heap level, the memory level. You can limit the execution timeout, so it's quite strongly protected. And of course, then there's access to the outside models, which would be controlled by actually a master abstract class that would enable to transfer value based on the validation logic. There's still a ton of open questions regarding this is how, let's say, an implementation looks like just by connecting the different contexts, because when you start your own secure environment, you have to jail it, so meaning that you need some kind of global context where you run, and then you have to desync it and essentially connect the specific meta. So the only hook points would be the hooking points with the higher classes, which enable internal transfers or stores of value. Yeah, so this is proof of concept, just testing things out. Why I liked it is basically one thing, addressing the problems that actually you, Mac and Rock already outlined. That's one thing. And another thing is giving the automation power, so to do transfers, to move tokens without actually executing, let's say, signed transactions on the client side, or pushing new transaction types if not really needed. So that's the missing module, I guess. Yeah, I can talk a bit more about it, but I would like just your feedback, your thoughts from you guys on this. What do you think? How do you think? Do you see yourself using it? And so on and so on.
Yeah, I think this looks really nice. I have a few questions regarding it, though.
Go ahead.
You mentioned that it compiles to WebAssembly, and that WebAssembly is run by the V8 engine.
No, the input can be WebAssembly or JavaScript, and then it compiles to.
Okay. So I was wondering, because I tried to look into WebAssembly a little bit, and I found out that you can compile C++ code into WebAssembly as well. So in theory, you could create smart contracts in C++, and those would run on the ARK chain.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's why I actually like the module, because also WebAssembly support is something they are keen on. WebAssembly is still not, let's say, the stable production phase. A lot of stuff is being done. They're testing it. Although some chains say they support it, but it's really, if you look at the specification, the proposals, and the standards, a lot of things are changing. So also this proof of concept, or a module that will grow out of this. One thing is to select the running engine, which is now V8, and then now we are preparing to deploy, let's say, the methods which are called, which should be JavaScript methods in our code base, but just interfacing and specifying strict interfaces, like which methods can be called out of the code running inside isolated environment. I think also WebAssembly could reach out with some kind of Rust or C++ contract, doing its own calculation, and then just calling the either storage or state transfer, which is the output of smart contract execution in the end. So yeah.
Okay, so I guess that also kind of answers my second question. So what I was going to ask was, is there a way to remove the, for example, random number generation from the smart contracts? Because that would be a nightmare to handle.
I don't know yet. I haven't looked into this, so I would have to check and see. Okay. Maybe go for.
But you do get the idea, yeah? So why I need to remove the? I'm talking about removing the random number generator, because then the state would not be convergent; it would diverge.
The state of the smart contract, or the state of? Yeah. Okay, I get it. Yeah. And this is something we would have to test later on.
Yeah, this looks nice though.
Thanks, but it's really in the initial phases, so I didn't want to dig further, because we can work together on this, test stuff, see how it works out, what are the limitations. Maybe it turns out be trashy, but I think that we should evolve from the old ways, the way virtual machines work, and move to, let's say, more higher levels that are already implemented. And if you have options to run JavaScript code and give address a much larger developer public than just looking at Ethereum's developers, I mean, it's really awesome if it turns out the way we want it to be. Anybody else? Okay, everybody fell asleep. Anything else, guys? I mean, we can still open any other discussions you want. If you have questions or topics you want to bring up, just shoot.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask something about my AI piece that I submitted. So in particular, I wanted to discuss delegate markets because I saw that in your white paper, you mentioned that, but you don't go into details about how that would work. So what I wanted to ask was, are they somehow working similar to the AIP I submitted, or are they completely different sort of a thing? Can you tell us that?
I can tell you what's in the white paper. I would have to reread your AIP proposal. So if you look at the white paper regarding the business logic, so the idea is so let's say one of the first products will be essential products we'll be launching now is push button blockchain, and of course this will be built around, let's say, a marketplace, meaning that you guys or anybody else can develop a plugin. This plugin should be registered somehow on blockchains. You know, that's why new transaction types were mentioned. Let's say business registration, plugin registration. This will add you some credibility. Not everybody will be able to, let's say, have a business registration and powered by our core logo, because you know, there can be a lot of scams. So this some of these businesses will be vetted, tested by us. Teams will be assessed, and so on. But the idea is then the plugins are registered on the mainnet, and when a company or anybody who wants to launch their own chain, because essentially they will do it. So there are tons of private environments, business processes that need to be handled. They will be able to select, you know, the functionalities. Let's say the core VM would be a plugin. Let's say some kind of a delegate makes a plugin for some kind of new transaction types or for some business logics related to IoT. So you will be able to select all the plugins that are registered, and then out of that continue with your blockchain deployment. Okay.
Okay.
That's the idea of the marketplace. And of course, inside this marketplace, there will be licenses. Like if you select the plugin, I don't know, submitted and deployed by Delegate Marc, you will be able to deploy it, but to use it, you will be some kind of tied with the license verification, which will be tied to actually your implementation, but stored on the chain, so it will know who can use your plugin and not. So this is the direction where we want to go. So.
Okay, so
otherwise you're just, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so if I understand this correctly, if I create a plugin as a delegate, then I have to be registered on the mainnet, yeah? And
well, yeah, more or less, yeah. If you want to run it as a business, make something good out of it, yeah, of course.
Okay, and are the delegates also sourced from mainnet, or how are they vetted? Is there a vetting procedure?
Well, we're not talking about delegate. The idea is to vet the business. I said, okay, one thing is delegate, you're running the network, but essentially if you want to run a business, you will run some kind of business, which will be business registration. So there will be a vetting procedure, but yeah.
Yeah, I understood that. What I was wondering about was, for example, if I'm a business and I want to deploy something and I don't want to have all the Genesis nodes running on my own machines. I want to give them out to some other people who are able to run it. So usually the method for this is to talk to other people, go back and forth and try to figure out, okay, if this delegate will work for me, if I promise that the coin's value will be worth something, I need to convince them basically to that my coin or my token would be worth something in the future. So this is quite, to me, it seems like this is quite a tricky thing, and it basically adds speculation to a service provider. So a delegate's role of running a node, as I see it, should only be that I need to run something for you so that you can run your network. I should be like getting equivalent output out of it, but I shouldn't need to speculate on the value of the coin. So that was the purpose of the AIP23, which it tried to solve. And I was wondering if maybe you are thinking along these same lines or not.
I'll have to read AIP23. That's one thing. Another thing is what you're addressing is essentially the open source community mechanics. Yeah, so you want to launch a new project which will be open for everyone. They want to get value from it, to get value from token. But we are addressing actually, okay, one thing is definitely, yes, that's something that should be addressed, open source projects, building new communities, building stuff on top of ARK. But another thing, if you look at corporate level, so companies, you know, we have a business process which usually involves different participants, so which participants can be seen as a delegate. You will have no problems convincing them to run nodes because the core value will be in the technology and in the plugins that were actually developed on mainnet and serve as a marketplace. But inside their network where they launched a chain to solve their specific business problem, they will serve a technology purpose. So making, I know, whatever, so registering IoT data, automated payouts, storing something, let's say, related to supply chain management. So this is where the, let's say, the big usage from the corporate side comes in. So and yes, as you said, we need to address both sides. So one thing is the corporate side, and one thing is what you mentioned, AIP23. So
okay, interesting. Thanks.
Yeah,
so
welcome.
you don't have that big of a you don't have that big of a concern regarding bigger companies getting their, like, because bigger companies won't actually need to get delegates because they will basically have private blockchains.
Yeah, but the idea is to get them to run private blockchain based on ARK technology. So, you know, and it has to be
and to purchase plugins,
yeah,
and stuff using ARK mainnet. But won't they be able just to kind of, I don't know, they can find all of our plugins and tools like on GitHub?
Of course, they will be able to do that, but essentially it's about support. It's about building new companies. You know, if you look at communication with bigger companies, they usually have their own IT department, but the rest is outsourced to service companies. And the idea is also to build a base of ARK service companies. I don't know, ARK Netherlands, ARK UK, wherever the business cycle starts to grow around, and these companies will actually provide services to these corporations. So normal software engineering, software developing services. Yeah, they don't want to copy it, so they really want to pay for a license and have a guaranteed support, whatever, because they don't have the manpower or the capability to do it all themselves, at least from the start. And then when they learn, they can manage. But we're not talking about a high gap in pricing. You know, the licenses wouldn't be so big that they would think about stealing the code or the data. So, but yeah, in the end, it's open source. So we are still looking at the best way to secure a plugin. You know, let's say you develop a plugin, you put it on npm repository, some kind of license logic it has inside. I don't know, storing the hash of the current code version on the mainnet. So how will you now validate that the execution of this plugin is actually done by a paid license? Meaning if a good developer, you know, jumps on the core and just puts a few comments there or changes the code on one node, he can bypass this, but essentially he cannot bypass all the other nodes. So still looking for the best way to secure this, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, definitely. Cool.
Okay, guys, anything else? I would invite you all for a beer or two, but yeah, we are all in this virtual environment, so maybe on next ARK conference or when we meet up in person. Thanks for your time. And yeah, I mean, if nothing else, let's continue in chat and let's push forward.
Thank you as well, yeah, and congrats to you, Marc.
Thank you, guys, and see you online.
Yes,
always.
in Slack.
Thanks,
Perfect.
bye.
Yeah.
Bye.